All right, so you're fluent in a language and you're thinking about sharing that skill as an online tutor. Awesome. Today, we're going to boil down the essentials of modern language teaching into a quick crash course, just for you. But here's the big question, right? You might be a brilliant speaker, but can you actually teach? Knowing a language and knowing how to teach it are two totally different things. And that's what we're going to unpack today, how to bridge that gap.
So, where do we start? First things first, and this is the most important rule of all. Your student is your compass. Every single thing you do has to start with understanding them as an individual learner. They're your guide.
And that leads us right into this idea of student-centered teaching. See, when you're tutoring one-on-one online, you have this massive advantage. You can throw the old, rigid, one-size-fits-all textbook window out the window. Every lesson can be perfectly tailored to their needs, their goals, and their interests.
So how do you figure all that out? Well, you start with what's called a needs analysis. This is your detective work. Before you plan a single lesson, you find out what do they really want to do with the language? Pass the test, order coffee on vacation. You also figure out their current level, maybe using the CEFR scale. That's just a standard way to measure proficiency. This isn't just prep work, it's literally the blueprint for everything that follows.
Okay, so you know your student inside and out. Now what? Now, you build them a roadmap. This isn't a strict schedule, but more of a flexible guide that shows them the path from point A, where they are now, to point B, their final goal.
And a really good roadmap just answers three simple questions. Number one, where is the student now? That's their current level. Two, where do they want to go? That's their big goal. And three, how are we going to get there? That's your teaching plan. See? It turns a vague wish into an actual, concrete journey.
Now, to make those goals super clear, we use the SMART framework. This is a game changer. Instead of a fuzzy goal like, I want to get better at speaking, a SMART goal is razor sharp. It's, by the end of 8 sessions, I want to hold a 5-minute conversation on a familiar topic at a B1 level. You see the difference? It's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. It gives you both a clear target to aim for.
All right, now for the fun part, the how-to. We know the student, we have the plan, but what do you actually do in a lesson? Let's take a quick look at a couple of core frameworks you can use.
When it comes to grammar, you've basically got 2 main paths. The deductive way is the classic school method. You explain a rule, then they practice it. Simple. But the inductive approach is often way more powerful. You give them examples first and then guide them to figure out the rule for themselves. It's more of a discovery. And because they figured it out, it sticks in their brains so much better.
Now let's talk about how to structure a whole lesson. There's PPP, present, practice, produce. Think of this like building with Legos. First, you present the new piece, maybe a grammar point. Then, they practice using it in controlled ways. Finally, they produce something freely on their own. It's great for accuracy. On the other hand, you have TBL, task-based learning. This is more like giving them a recipe and telling them to cook. They try a real-world task first, and you jump in with help and language they need along the way. TBL is absolutely fantastic for building real-world fluency.
So you've delivered a killer lesson. High fives all around. But what's the point if they forget it all by tomorrow? This next part is all about fighting the biggest enemy of learning.
And here it is. It's not about how hard the concept is. The real challenge is just forgetting. Your number one job as a tutor isn't just explaining things well, it's making sure your student can actually remember and use them next week, and the week after that.
I mean, get this. The human brain is like a leaky bucket. Within 24 hours, we can forget about 70% of new information. After a week, it could be up to 90%. It's wild. But there's a solution, and it's called spaced repetition. It just means you have to review things strategically over time at just the right moments to stop that forgetting process in its tracks.
Okay, what about mistakes? Knowing when and how to correct them is crucial. If you're doing a drill focused on accuracy, correct them right away. But if your student is in the middle of telling you a great story, don't interrupt their flow. Just jot down the mistakes and talk about them later. And a great technique is recasting. If they say, I goed home, you just casually say, oh, you went home? Cool. It's a gentle correction that doesn't kill their confidence.
This right here is such a huge mindset shift. Your goal is not to make your students sound like a perfect native speaker. It's about making them intelligible, making sure other people can understand them clearly. This takes so much pressure off and lets them focus on what really matters: communication.
And that brings us to our final and maybe most important point. This is about the mindset that really separates the good tutors from the truly great ones.
You've got to remember that great teaching isn't some finish line you cross. It's a craft. It's something you practice and get better at with every single lesson you teach.
So how do you practice? You use this simple, powerful loop, the reflective practice cycle. After each lesson, just take 5 minutes. Ask yourself, what went well? What was kind of clunky? Why? Then figure out a better way to do it and try that new approach in your next lesson. That's it. That's how you turn experience into real expertise.
Because at the end of the day, it all comes down to this. The absolute best tutors never stop being students themselves. They stay curious, they keep learning, and they're always trying to get just a little bit better.
So, with these ideas in your toolkit, the question really isn't just, can you speak the language anymore? It's, are you ready to teach it? Because that first student of yours is out there, waiting for you. So, are you ready?